Nedra up here. Call to order, and we'll start with the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Scott. Nedro.
Here.
Wood.
Here.
Dumont. Duff.
Here.
Mallett.
Here.
Here. We've heard from Mr. Dumont. He's out of state. We haven't heard from Mr. Scott, so I expect he will be here shortly. Do I hear a motion to excuse Mr. Dumont?
So moved.
Motion Duff, second Sinkowitz. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, correspondence, we have none tonight. Additions to...
John, you have that letter that you put here about the gentleman with the hat?
Oh, that was an addition tonight, so.
Okay, well,
Yeah, maybe, I guess we could include that as correspondence. It's the
I
last
just
thing.
think it's
Just FYI.
noteworthy.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry, I had
No, that's fine.
late-breaking correspondence, I hadn't caught up with it myself.
Late breaking.
Yeah.
So here, I'll just read it to everybody. It's from Alfred Schweitzer. My name is actually I should say it's from Connie Schweitzer. My name is Connie Schweitzer and my father is Raymond Schindorf and we live on Roselawn Street. The village sent him a wonderful letter and gave him a village hat for his 103rd birthday. That was so kind of you and we wanted to thank you for such a kind gesture. He loves his hat. Thanks again, Connie. So do I hear a motion to receive and file the letter
So
from
moved.
Connie Schweitzer? Motion Malik, second Duff. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you for catching that. I have not seen it below the aeration. Okay, additions to business. I did want to mention one thing. We do have a recommendation from the negotiating committee for the 3-year agreement with Michigan Fraternal Order of Police Labor Council. We haven't held a closed session to discuss it. We have that recommendation from negotiating, and I was just wondering if we wanted to put a closed session to discuss labor negotiations on the agenda, if people think they have things we should discuss. Generally,
You
we
mean
do
this
not.
evening?
Yep.
We probably should. I mean, I think it's a done deal, but I think we should have counsel.
I think it probably is, but,
Yeah.
you know, that's specifically one of the things that we generally do not discuss in open. So, so we have that. I have a reminder to folks, I've gotten a couple requests lately, that if we want to add something from a council person to the agenda, I'm really pretty happy to add almost everything, but our policy is make sure you have something written that you can present to us so that we don't just get an item without a little bit more information about what it is so that everybody gets it in their packet and can know. So do I hear a motion to approve, and I don't believe we have any other additions, right?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
To approve the agenda with the addition of a closed session to discuss the police contract proposed by negotiating as item 17B.
Support.
So, Mr. President,
Yep.
you have on F1, recommendation to approve 3-year agreement, which would fall before your closed session.
And do I hear an amendment to, a friendly amendment to that motion to move item F1 to item 17C?
Second.
Thanks for getting us in the correct order there.
We had the cart in front of the horse, for sure.
So the motion is, and I think we already said we had motion Duff, second Sinkowitz? Yep. Okay. The motion was to approve the agenda with the addition of 17B closed session to discuss collective bargaining. Thank you. And 17C, motion to, or recommendation to approve the proposed contract. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, we got there. Okay, item, let's see, first call to the public. So this is an opportunity for citizens to address the council on agenda items. Seeing none, I will close the first call, and we will move on to item 7, approval of consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Sikowitz, second Duff. Further discussion? Roll call vote.
Scott.
We're going to be busy.
Metro.
Yes.
Singlewood.
Yes.
Duff.
Yes.
Mallett.
Yes.
McGee.
Yes. Okay, that brings us, we have no public hearings tonight, down to item A, swearing in of Reserve Officer Ann Grunwald.
I came to you guys in January at our council meeting and asked that we place Officer Grunwald through the Reserve Academy. She's completed that, and we wanted to finish this up tonight by getting her sworn in as a reserve officer for our village. She did a great job in the academy. She excelled according to the instructors, but we're very proud of her, and we're very happy to have her on our team.
Just quickly, do I need a motion to appoint her as a reserve officer, or?
I mean, you can do a motion to appoint her as reserve officer.
Okay.
I make
like
that
to-
motion.
Motion Malik, second Sinkowitz. Honestly, I just couldn't remember if we had done that in the beginning and sent her.
I think we just approved her.
We just approved her going through. Okay.
I mean, it doesn't hurt, but it's not hurting you to do that motion.
Doesn't hurt us. We
Sounds
get
good.
we
Sounds
get to
good.
vote for her. This is good. Further discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations.
All right, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
the duties of the office of Reserve Police Officer
the duties of the office of Reserve Police Officer
in and for the Village of Wolverine Lake,
in and for the Village of Wolverine Lake,
County of Oakland,
County of Oakland,
and State of Michigan,
and State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's nice to have a pretty face on that force. I mean, welcome aboard.
You was talking about John, right?
No.
You could have painted it. Come on.
I can already tell today, it's just going to take everybody to keep me on track.
It's much.
It's going to be one of those nights.
It's going to be one of those nights.
Yeah.
Everybody's warned.
Okay, now get out. Thank you, guys.
Good deal.
All right. Brings us to item 12B, recommendation from the Planning Commission, recommendation to appoint Paul Snyder to the Planning Commission for a term expiring on 12/31/19. Brian, would you like to make that motion?
Well, absolutely, I did in planning, so might as well here.
So motion Nedrow, do I hear a second? Second. Second Duff, further discussion. Brian, any introduction you'd like to give?
Just that Paul moved here recently, last, year and a half or so, from Northville, and he was very involved with Northville. Wants to give back to the community, and it's a neighbor not too far down the street from me, so met him last year, and I think he'd be a great fit for planning.
Saw his application, looked really well qualified, so. Any further discussion?
Well, he wanted to be on the water board also, so he has some interest on possibly doing double duty, so that
We do have a
could possibly do that, so we're gonna look at that
potential
next month.
liaison there.
So.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Come on up and be sworn in.
Better than being sworn at, I guess.
Same thing. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
the duties of the Office of Planning Commission
the duties of the Office of Planning Commission
in and for the Village of Wolverine Lake,
in and for the Village of Wolverine Lake,
County of Oakland,
County of Oakland,
and State of Michigan,
and State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Congratulations.
Thanks for setting up.
Did you just sign right there and then you're official?
Legal.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
All right, brings us to item C. Recommendation from Park and Rec that we see the village decorated with bunting flags during the holiday. We got a motion from council. I think there's probably a little more discussion that needs to happen here. I know Debbie was involved in that motion, and Mark, you might have been there also during the discussion. Oh, wait, no, you're no longer there. It's Dave. Sorry. Dumont not here. And Debbie, I don't know if you've had a chance to talk with Nathan about this. I mean, my understanding is basically what you're saying is like, let's do something a little more festive around the park and the office. Did you guys have anything in particular in mind, or a budget, or?
Well, we've got 5 bunting flags would be nice around the village. The park we didn't even really discuss. I'm sorry. And Costco has them right now for $39.99. So they're $40 a piece. We wanted 5.
You wanted 5. Okay, so it
Right.
would be actually like $200.
Exactly.
Well spent.
So I think with that, and, oh wait, we wouldn't pay tax because we're a municipality. So do I hear a motion to approve $200 for bunting flags for decorations?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Sikowitz, second Duff. Further discussion?
Where would that come out of?
Yeah.
Like,
As a matter of fact, I have a budget item called improvement projects where there's about $792 left, and sounds like ample coverage there.
okay.
It was originally $1,000 in the budget. We spent just a little bit.
Sounds like exactly the right budget item.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks. So we've got motion, we've got second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Medrow,
Yes.
Singlewood,
Yes.
Duff,
Yes.
Mallett,
Yes.
Gee.
Yes. Motion carries. All right, update from the Veterans Memorial Committee. Ed, you want to deliver an update?
Yeah, real quick, we've been meeting for about an hour and a half before our council meetings, and we're struggling with a location in the park. So we've decided that we're going to have a meeting before our budget session, and the committee is going to make a definite location where we think is the best location for the memorial in our park, and then we will bring that to council at the budget session, and hopefully it'll get approved, and we'll have a place to put the flag and start moving forward.
Yep. And
So that's where we're at now, so hopefully by the end of this month, we'll have a location picked out and ready to go.
okay. And just so everybody knows, they've had a lot of discussion on it. There are a lot of pluses and minuses to the various locations that they've looked at. One of the possibilities that was discussed was where the exercise equipment is now, and I was at the meeting, so and I kind of represented back from our discussion during the Clara Miller Park Master Plan. It was a concern about whether council was firmly fit on the notion that exercise equipment could never move. And I think what our concern was sort of twofold, one of which was adding the extra cost of moving it to that budget, whatever that might be. And also that, we kind of felt that the equipment's working pretty well together and in that area, but we're not set on, my gosh, it has to be right there at, item A5 on the map. it could move around if there was a plan that needed some of that space, and there was a fundraising plan that included that. I mean, there's going to be added cost for that sort of thing, if within the scope of the project or the plan, it makes the most sense to do that. I think council could come on board with that, but what we'd really want to see from them is sort of, a plan and a vision and what would actually make that work. So that was sort of my representation on behalf of council to that committee.
And we'll make an effort to bring it to you next month, before the month's
Is
over.
there a consensus now as to a spot, or
I-
is it still?
I don't think there is. I think there was a bit of deadlock around alternatives that weren't the exercise equipment, where the exercise equipment is. And I totally understand how that could be, because the locations all had pluses and minuses.
Right.
I think they're gonna go back, they're gonna look at it, they're gonna walk the site, they're gonna look at it, considering all of the options. And what I told them, and I think what they want to be able to bring to us, is a strong consensus from that committee on, here's really what we want to do. We think this is going to be best, this is going to be best for the village, and I think once we get that, we as a council are going to be able to get on board with that. What I didn't want to have happen is sort of a fractured recommendation from the committee, and then council have to come in and sort of intercede or make a choice on their behalf. I mean, I think we've got a lot of good representation on that committee. I think we just need to give them a little bit more time to work through it.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure if it was supposed to be for the first call, or can we do it now, because of Phil Peters, resigning from the.
I have, I believe, two motions I heard from you guys, so, yep. So before we move on to the next item, so there were.
That was coming up before.
I
we
figured,
talked.
we'd get there.
About Jerry? Yeah.
Yep. So Ed?
Okay, to continue on, Phil Peters removed himself from the group, and Jerry Mikowski stepped up, so we need to approve her for that position.
So hear
That
that
would
as
be
a
a
motion.
motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion to appoint Jerry Mikowski to the Veterans Committee from Sikowitz, second Malik. Further discussion?
Yeah, do you think she's qualified to fill that spot?
Kind of a rookie to government, but, no, actually, I think Jerry's gonna be a really good addition to that committee. She's got a pretty good perspective on how to make these things work.
Everything she's been involved in the past has been a success, so hopefully this will continue.
So I think this is really good. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations or condolences, as the case may be. And there was also one more motion that came out of there, and it was just a request to use the village in fundraising. They were talking about doing some T-shirts as a fundraiser or other things, and they had kind of a generic design. And because it's something that we're doing within the village that we're trying to support, they were wondering if they could use the village logo. And I thought it's probably a good idea if we get a motion to approve the use of the village logo in fundraising for the memorial. So do I hear that motion?
Say, what was it again?
So we would be giving them permission to, if they do T-shirts or they do flyers or whatever, to use the village logo in their fundraising or on T-shirts or whatever for fundraising purposes.
Oh, I'd make that motion, yes.
Motion Malik, second
Aye.
Sikowitz. Further discussion? Everybody clear? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And probably the best idea there is to work with the administrator on some of the specifics around that.
We just got all sorts of nice, high-quality logos because of our sign down at the end of the road, so I can get you whatever you need.
And I think that was it from Memorial Committee. And they'll talk about it when we get to scheduling the work session. We'll also put on it, an opportunity to have recommendations from that committee. They expect they're going to work through their location issues.
Are they gonna have an idea of coming up with what they want and then a secondary choice? That might be something that they would consider.
I think what they're going to try to get to is sort of unity around a single recommendation.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said, are they planning on having a choice A and a choice B?
For the location?
Yeah.
It'll probably be an A, it'll be one.
I mean, if A comes in and we really don't like it, we can send it back to them.
Thought, that's all.
I'd rather see them all get around an A, personally.
It's tough because there's pros and cons to each location. And of course, I think the location I picked is the best. Debbie thinks hers is the best.
And I heard the discussion, and
And then
there
we're
really are
talking about
pluses
moving
and
the
minuses.
memorial, and, you know, there's a big expense in there, so if you're talking about taking those exercise equipment off and relocating them and pouring pads and everything, I don't know, $10,000, $12,000, $15,000, you know, that would have gone towards it, so there's a lot that has to be weighed very seriously in our next meeting, because we're going around and around about what we want for
Well, didn't-
memorial,
I mean,
and we
didn't
still don't
that-
have a
didn't that
location
ultimately
for
come
it.
up for discussion, and I think actually we made a motion in that last meeting, didn't we?
Not to move this.
Not to move it?
Right.
So the motion, and so let me be clear in what I represented as council's position. I don't remember if it was an actual motion.
Yes, it was.
Was it a motion?
Mhm.
In the Clara Miller Park plan was, you're right, it was to leave the exercise equipment where it was.
Mhm.
My representation to them, and this is a good time for council to tell me if I was misrepresenting the intent of that motion or the intent of our discussion, or the tenor of our discussion, was that we weren't interested in breaking up the equipment and moving it along the path, that we didn't want to incur the added expense, especially within the park plan of moving that equipment. But that we weren't set on, the equipment must be at this exact place. However, that if they have, you know, if that area where the exercise equipment is really where they want to place it, they have to put together a fundraising plan and a budget that accommodates moving that equipment. So, I mean, it's added expense, and I think that was our concern, and our other concern was keeping that equipment together and in a reasonably visible area, you know, location in that general area, but it wasn't tied to that specific site.
You know, since we're discussing this, and I really didn't want to go into this in the meeting, but it might make sense. I don't know how difficult, and if there's enough time to either, I don't know if Mr. Powell and our administrator could get together, but what would be a ballpark cost to pour another slab like that someplace else in the park, and the labor, which I would think our DPW could unscrew and move that equipment to a new location, because whatever we,
I
guess
think that
what
would
I'm
be a
saying.
good input to the committee and to
Yeah,
council.
because if we use that one piece of concrete that's there, that's a piece of concrete we don't have to lay.
Sure.
But what is it, what are we talking about? Now, because if that's the most ideal location and everybody wants that location, then do it. If it's gonna be, you know, another slab of concrete's gonna be $5,000-6,000, and the labor to relocate them and remount them is another 4 or 5. So let's say you're looking at 8 or 10. If it's 20 or 25, then that might be out of line. So if it's at all possible in this time frame, we can get, you know, I mean, just a rough guesstimation.
I wouldn't be surprised if we don't have the original cost of putting in that pad in the first place.
You know
and
what? I bet you do.
I'll bet the cost now is probably pretty similar.
Concrete prices went up, that's for sure.
Concrete prices, remember, every contractor is absolutely just booked. And so we have to try to fit it in. There are several good contractors in the area.
No, I don't think it's something that we want to do this year. I think it's just to get a general, you know, and maybe you, from your experience, you could look at it and say, okay, you know, 10 yards of concrete, labor, another $1,000, and, you know, and
So let's just
just,
find out how much it cost before. Let's assume it's gone up a little bit since then, 20% or whatever.
yeah, just a ballpark figure.
I don't think we're looking for, you know, down to the penny, but to give that committee an idea of, okay, so if you want to do that location, here's the cost.
You know, just make another size of the slab.
We
Whatever's
have-
out there.
Yeah.
I think it's 70-something.
Same as out there.
Yeah, well,
Maybe
you
the
just
same
use that
size.
first.
We're good.
Okay, cool. So we'll get that to you
Yeah.
guys, and that, I think that'll be helpful.
Just some rough estimate. Thank you.
All
Sound
right.
like a good idea, Debbie? Okay,
Thank you.
got to get her approval.
Well, Ed's finally figured that out anyway. Okay, I think that's what we've got from Memorial Committee. It was a pretty good meeting. They had several different design concepts before them and interesting options. Okay, recommendation from Water Management Board.
Can I make an announcement?
Yes.
I got a text message from Mr. Scott. He had some issues arise, but he is planning to be here as soon as he can, so obviously he's the liaison from the board.
I would recommend we defer discussion on this. Do I hear a motion to defer discussion until after our setting topics for the work session?
Sure.
Second.
Motion Duff, second Malik, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, brings us past item F1, which is now 17C, to item G, recommendation from Engineer Powell, tennis court repair.
Thank you, Council. The administration let me know that the tennis courts were cracking, substantial cracking last fall. And due to the timing of the contractors, I wasn't able to get them out there until earlier this spring. And the company that did all the resurfacing and all the original crack filling was McKierney Asphalt and Sealing out of the Lansing area. The owner of that company came out. I asked him what happened. He says, well, you know, all of their stuff is on the surface, and they cannot control what happens in the cracking of an existing asphalt. He said if they had been hired to actually put the slab, put the asphalt in, then they would have absolutely stood behind all the cracking that occurred in their tennis court. However, they said in order to fix those cracks, and you can see what it's like, one of the larger ones there on the tennis court, they would actually route that crack open, drop sand in, bring it up to within a couple inches, inch and a half of the surface, backfill that with a crack sealer, and then cover it over, and then repaint the surface, repaint the lines in the areas where the cracks were. So they're really looking at a couple hundred lineal feet of cracks. I went back to the original contract we had with them, which they did the original resurfacing in 2016, so it's only been a couple of years. And in going over the cost quotes, which was, I found it fairly interesting, 2 contractors bid on this particular project. McKierney Asphalt, their price for resurfacing the asphalt and providing the new surface and the new painting and fixing the cracks at that time was $8,500. The next closest bid was $9,800, and then they had an add-on of $3,400 to fix the cracks that were there as part of the repair. So McKierney actually fixed the cracks that were there. Unfortunately, last fall, they started coming back, and this spring, they're even wider. Their price, and I think I provided that in your packet, their price to come out and repair the cracks, and now that's it's no guarantee that there won't be cracks somewhere else on the tennis court next spring, but their price is $3,000 to come in, ream those out, fill them, cover them, smooth them out, and then repaint over top of the cracks. And I leave that up to council as to whether or not that's a cost that you'd like to undertake.
So I think my question's going to be, and I realize it's an uncertain world with cracking pavement in unexpected places. Are we going down a path of $3,000 a year every year for fixing that year's cracks, and we'd be better off really tearing up, putting it in as a better surface, or are we like to be like, you know, 3,000 here, a couple more years, 3,000 here? I'm guessing a whole new court in there is probably, I don't know, 50, 75,000. So you can do a lot of $3,000 projects for that.
That is correct. And keep in mind that we have an asphalt crack sealing program every year. We put about $8,000 to $10,000 into the roads to maintain the integrity of the pavement as it is. And so asphalt and concrete both crack, and we just need to stay up on it. Again, it's not a matter of milling off the surface and putting a new surface on, because it's really cracking down in the depth of the full depth of the asphalt. So the only way to prevent this is to put it down in concrete, 6 inches concrete with heavy steel in it, reinforcing in it, and then starting over with all the resurfacing it. As you said, Mr. President, it's a very expensive undertaking, and it would be much less expensive to every other year fix whatever cracking occurs.
Mike, is it typically the same cracks that pop open?
I tried to determine that, and I just couldn't. They did such a great job resurfacing it last time that I can't tell where the other cracks were.
It's
So-
amazing to me, because I didn't look at it this year, but last year, you think the cracks would be like maybe the thickness of cardboard.
Yeah.
They're a half-inch thick. And I think a lot of it is just that the asphalt is drying out and it's shrinking, but I agree, for the amount of use in the pickleball, I mean, if we have to put $2,000 or $3,000 into that tennis court every other or every third year, we can do that for a while, because like you said, it's all got to come out, and you need concrete, and then, it's going way overboard for something that's just, extremely recreational.
Yes, sir.
You said in 2016 they worked on it. What was the
Yeah.
cost then?
Their cost was $8,500. And what they did, they came in, sandblasted the whole surface, fixed all the cracks, put the epoxy coat on it, and repainted it all. And really, it was a beautiful job when they were done. And unfortunately, that's what we have now.
Well, that basically comes down to $5,500 a year. And hopefully after this, adding the 85 and this, if you end up spending $3,000 every 2 years, makes sense to do it. That would be my point.
Is that a motion?
That's my motion.
I second it.
So motion Malik, second Sinkowitz, to approve repair of the tennis court for $3,000 as presented. Further discussion? Roll call vote.
Yes.
Nedrow,
Yes.
Sinkowitz,
Yes.
Duff,
Yeah.
Mallett.
Gotta remember where you're at. huh?
Yes.
No, I knew where we were at.
Thank you, council, very much.
Physically.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Michael.
book, by the way.
Yeah, I noticed. I lost my book.
Okay, brings us to item H, Helmsford Pump Inspection and Repairs. I'm going to hand this to Nathan to introduce, and I think we'll have
Yeah.
another discussion.
The Helmsford pump is not operable at the moment. We don't know exactly why, but Andy received this estimate from Brown Drilling. It's a potentially expensive repair. If you look at the quote, it's $4,510 just to pull up the pump and inspect it. And then below that, you see the various list of things that could potentially be wrong. We don't think that all those are wrong. That would be unusual to have all those things need to be replaced, but there's a chance that all those things need to be replaced. So this is a significant cost, but if we don't have it inspected soon, we're not going to have use of it at the time when we would need to have use of it. So that's the reason for this request right now.
So, and I think my general question about it was, it just kind of goes back to originally moving this over to be an augmentation well, because it had been a village drinking water well before we moved that area. Was, a large reason we moved it to augmentation was because of the cost of decommissioning this. I don't remember exactly what that cost was offhand. I was wondering if our engineer remembers about what it might have been.
I believe it was about $10,000 to decommission that well house.
So, it's sort of a similar cost at this point. I think it's been a pretty good augmentation well for us. It's, it's fairly well oxygenated.
Yeah.
I think the DPW likes using it. There are some advantages to getting a little more water
Water
flow
flow
back
through the
in
back,
the
yep,
canals.
yep.
But I did want to bring that to, just to everybody's attention. That,
Do we
you know,
have another source for doing this? Because I know Mark and I talked about this in great length when we were up in, at our conference, and, you know, I mean, I think he's got everything on here covered, but doesn't know what's really wrong. I don't know, I mean, I'm sure there's other people around besides Brown Drilling. I'm trying to think of some of the other drilling companies that, that farm wells and irrigation wells, deep ones, but be nice if we could get another quote.
turn to our engineer here.
There are 3 or 4 municipal well repair companies in the area, and I can provide those to Andy and to Nathan.
So, council's pleasure, do we want to ask for additional quotes? I mean, you know, I think we have augmentation wells, should we need them between now and June.
Mhm.
You know, if we push this repair off a month.
Well, one of them is still operational in the Helmsford pump.
There's 2 pumps there?
Pumps.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. So
one's still working.
So one is still working, so
Yeah.
so it's not down altogether, it's just
No,
the
it's
one?
just not pushing as.
Oh, okay, I didn't even
same-
realize that.
Same volume of water. The, I actually went over and looked at it. So the motor starting cabinet, actually, one of the leads on the 3rd phase is burnt up. That's the main thing that I saw wrong with it. Anything else, it has to be pulled up, but again, everything else checked out good.
So, not to ask a silly question, is it possible that it's something as fairly straightforward as repairing an electrical lead above ground, or is it more likely that
It's
a
the
problem
actu-
underneath
it's the
caused it to
actual
burn
starting
out?
gear
Yeah.
that burnt up.
Oh, okay.
So it's not going to be just a matter of replacing a wire, it's actually the thing that you flip the switch, and the switch then energizes and powers up a
Contact.
contact.
I was about 99.9% sure that that was not going to be the case,
So,
but.
but nevertheless, because I had talked to Andy about it, just when he was trying to figure out this stuff, and I recommended that have an electrician out there
Mhm.
that deals with that type of switching gear, and see what they give in terms of cost. So,
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
And he might be able to check with the
electrician.
motor too. It might be a short on the motor or something.
no, the motor, so that's what the well company had told Andy, and I went over there and checked it, and it's, the motor, the windings are still good.
Well, then,
so.
that's no big deal.
When's the
Patricia
last
should be
time
able
we
to-
serviced this well?
I think we
Serviced
served.
it,
Or in any major form?
It was operational last summer.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, have we had the service done on it to any extent in the last
I mean,
5 years?
We've been doing routine maintenance on it all
Well,
along.
routine maintenance, that's to
Because all
keep
that
it running, I
calcium and
understand.
shit.
But we haven't had a problem, so if it's a viable item for the village, I think we should go after it
He's
and
more into
fix it.
electricity than I am.
A question, Nathan, has the resident who came to the water board meeting on the pump squealing that was going on over at Mallow Beach, I know I've walked by there near the end of the summer, and as you're walking by that augmentation, of course, you're a long distance away, you can hear that pump squealing. I was wondering if this would be a time to have an inspection of that pump too. I'm not saying to repair it, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but he was at, I think, 2 sessions of the water board meeting, if not 3,
don't
complaining about that. We
know that
sent
I've
them to you guys. so.
had any conversation or any complaints like that.
Okay.
Anything that comes in that's related in any way, shape, or form to the well or the lake, we have an Excel spreadsheet of complaints and how we track
Yeah.
them and how we answer them. I don't recall that one coming up, to us at least, at Village Hall here. But if we want to have it checked out, certainly, that's up to council.
Yeah, it's in his backyard, more or less. I think maybe he notices it. I walked by his house and I noticed it, so. And I just
So-
wanted to bring it up since we're on that subject at this point in time.
It sounds to me like we've got a pretty strong consensus to ask DPW and our administrator and our engineer to go back, take another look,
Yeah.
maybe come back with some more quotes. So I think probably what we maybe do is just, let's not take action this month. I think, Nathan, you've got enough to proceed.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I think Mark's idea of getting an actual electrician in there.
I think that's an excellent idea. Okay, so I think no motion there. If we need to work on it, bring it back next month.
Well, question, John bringing up the other one, you said near Mallow Beach, was it? Should that be looked at too?
I expect that'll be something that our administrator has taken a note on, and,
Well, should be taken just for, I mean, we could theoretically, because this is budgeted, right?
No.
Oh, this is not, okay, never mind then. Scratch that. I was gonna.
When you say this is budgeted, let me clarify that a little bit. There are some things we didn't, this would be a capital outlay item in the general fund. There are some things we didn't do that we're proposing to push forward into next year. We didn't hit the full $40,000 number for the village signs. So there is some ability there to, if we want to get it done by the end of the fiscal year, through a budget amendment or something like that, we might be able to do it that way. Or simply approve a brand new expenditure.
I mean, I think we can approve the expenditure if we have it. I think we just want more input before we do that.
Sure.
All right. Item I, recommendation to authorize duct cleaning for Village Hall at a cost of $1,890.
We don't think the ducts have been clean here for a while, and we've noticed some air quality issues in the building as we work in the offices day to day. So, Andy, we did have multiple quotes. This is the proposal that we're putting forward from Amnesty Air Duct Cleaning. They're based in Novi, cost of $1,890. This would clean all the ducts. It would also service our HVAC system, hopefully get a little better performance out of that. But this is something that we do need to do periodically, and I don't think, and Mr. Condict and I spoke about this, I don't think this was done at the time the building was redesigned. And so we don't know exactly how long it's been, but it's at least been, 4 or 5 years, and we would like to make sure we're breathing in clean air.
So moved.
So, motion Duff, second Sinkowitz, to approve the cleaning of the ducts at a cost of $1,890 and the associated budget amendment.
Does that include, you mentioned air conditioning, the heating units too?
Yes.
Okay. Anything that blows air through the building.
Exactly.
I assume that'll go into village complex.
Doesn't
maintenance
count on the
expenses,
hot air.
right?
That's exactly where it's going to go.
A lot of hot air.
Just getting warmed up for the budget season. All right, further discussion? Roll call vote?
Scott?
Yes.
Nedrow?
Yes.
Sinkowitz?
Yes.
Duff?
Yes.
Malik?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes. All right, item J, Officer Nathan.
Another request, Chief Ellsworth came to me a while ago about when we were hiring the new police officers, about how we make officer IDs, and I believe Walled Lake currently makes our IDs because we don't have the ability to do that in-house.
When we joined forces in 2007 with Wall Lake, we went in together to buy a ID maker, to make the plastic cards. And
Can't hear you.
and I'm sure people at home are very happy about that. We make the plastic ID cards. Well, that's been since replaced. They've had to buy another one. It was over 10 years ago. So they bought an updated one and didn't include us in that, which is obviously we need to do something for ourselves. Now, these are very multi-useful. There's several needs. Obviously, our officers, reserve officers, our DPW needs identification. It wouldn't hurt for, obviously, our planning commission, things of those nature, people, our ordinance officer. We really need some decent, professional-looking IDs, well overdue. When I came here, we were still laminating, well, we still are actually laminating, piecing the cards together and laminating them, and those are our IDs. And sometimes
You don't want to go Jim Rockford with a little printing press in the glove box of his Firebird?
we pretty much do that now. And the ladies in the front office have done a good job with it, but they're not very professional looking. No fault of theirs. It's obviously, the times have changed. And I really think that in our benefit to do something like this going forward.
How many do you?
Wait, I have a motion, Duff, do I hear a second?
I think it's well warranted.
Yep. And then we'll get to
Second.
discussion.
I didn't say word, I'm not.
So a motion from Duff to approve it, do I hear a second?
I'll
Second, Scott. Ed, go ahead.
How many of them do you typically make in a year?
Well, remember, we have to make them with expiration dates. So every 3 years, we have them made. We have to, each of us have to have 2 of them. One we carry with us in our wallets, and one we carry with us in our pockets. You figure we have 12 officers between our Marine officers, our part-time, or our reserve officers and our full-time officers. But then we also have to issue a type of identification for any type of vendor. Our ice cream people, for example, they have to have an identification saying that they have the permits to do that. So there are several times a year we use these, and anytime we get a new officer, whether one leaves and we get another one, I can't issue the same IDs, obviously. So we have to create more. Unfortunately, in the last year, we've made several changes in our department.
We
so
shouldn't have to worry about that for a while, but
And
still.
you're right. We shouldn't have to worry about that for a while, but it's a huge inconvenience, and Wall Lake has said, we could probably do this one more time with you, but it costs them money also. And, they've moved on to a new system.
No, I
and
guess
think
what I
it's-
was getting at, Chief, I mean, if we make that many that it makes sense to have it here, other than a convenience, that's one thing. But, if it's,
I agree with that. I actually looked into a company that could make them for us and send them to us, because there's a company out there but that gets very expensive. It does. They would charge $7.50 a piece.
$7.50 for a card?
For a card, per card. So $15 an officer, anytime but you have to pay a subscription fee to them too. So they're gonna pay them whether you use them or not. So I think it's something we could use around the office. I really think it's a worthy addition to our.
Do you think the other employees need some too?
Well, I think it's good for anybody who's out in the village, like
DPW?
DPW would be helpful. Jeff, obviously, would be nice for the code enforcement officer to have something.
Okay.
One of the real benefits, and one of the things that would probably utilize the most is, like, people who are fertilizer applicators who follow our ordinance, they get an ID every year when they register. Right now, they're getting a laminated piece of paper. They would get this. We now have the coal tar applicator ordinance, they'll get
Right.
this.
So there's plenty of use for it.
So the number could vary year to year, depending on how
Yeah.
many of those types, but I definitely think there's enough use for it.
And this is not a machine that typically wears out, does it?
No, it's no different than a printer or a computer.
Okay.
Obviously, if,
All right.
it's nothing we
Enough.
shouldn't have to worry about.
All right, so I had motion, I had second. Further discussion?
I have a question. We have an ordinance in the village where door-to-door people have to register at the village, okay? Now, unfortunately, I don't think we have that many that register, because my wife is firm believer, do you have a permit? Oh, yeah, we do. Well, where'd you get it? Well, over there. Well, where's over there? They have no idea. Is this something, if they do apply for a permit, the card can be printed with an expiration date for a day or two or whatever? I mean,
Yes.
And that's part of our planned use for this.
okay.
That, yeah.
Yeah, over and above, I can understand what John was saying there.
And there's fees for those, right?
There are
Apply
fees for
the
those.
permit? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, again, it kind of pays for itself
It
in the long run.
it most certainly could.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Scott?
Yes.
Nedrow?
Yes.
Sinkowitz?
Yes.
Duff?
Yep.
Mallett?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes. All right, thank you, council. Brings us to second call to the public, opportunity for citizens to address the council regarding any village business. Once, going twice. Seeing none, I will close the second call to the public. That'll move us down to item N, motion to receive and file proposed fiscal year budget and motion to schedule a public hearing on the budget for June 13th, 2018.
Thank you.
Look at that, June.
Thank you, Mike.
As is our custom, Mr. President, I simply hand these out this evening with maybe a few brief remarks. What do you have down there? Nathan? You got you and Nathan. I think three more.
Thank you, sir.
If I don't get one, I don't have to go on.
It's okay. Probably not be here anyway. You don't. Yeah, I'm good there.
He's got it.
Among the highlights this year, we're not proposing any big-time capital expenditures, no vehicles, either police or DPW, so our capital outlay is limited. There are a number of projects that we didn't get to this year. We didn't get to berm replacement, or berm repair, I should say, the Benstein walkway, and a few other things that we're proposing, or we're proposing to kind of push forward into this year's budget, assuming that the Greenway drain approval was the other one, that was the third one. You'll see that in a very brief memo that that you'll see at the outset. I follow that up with a little bit of a summary and then a history of our fund balance, and just this idea that in spite of everything, we're still not back where we were at the peak of our property values peaked in 2008, and we're still not back yet, even with the roughly $8 million that the Beachcrest project has added to our taxable value. So in a nutshell, there's nothing alarming in it. The initial budget proposed, it looks like we're going to dip into fund balance yet again, but that is by design because of the work that we're going to be doing this year on the local streets, none on the major roads. And the motion that you were just considering is contained in there if you want to see that. I bought these things a few years ago, so when you actually use them, you don't see the page numbers because it gets obliterated. So in 2 weeks when we sit down and discuss it, we'll just have to yank these things off. But might as well use them, right? But other than that, there's nothing alarming. Of course, I've taken into account the deployment of our new DPW guy. With all the other DPW employees, their costs are spread amongst different funds, different departments, different cost centers. Taking into account the new police staffing level as well. So all of those things are there, and looking forward to talking with you in 2 weeks.
All right. Everybody here has been through the process before, so any questions to Mike as they come up, and we'll go through it in a couple weeks. Any questions? Oh, we do need actually the motion to receive and file. Do I hear that motion?
Second.
Motion Nedrow, second Duff. Further discussion? Better get a roll call vote on that one.
Scott?
Yes?
Nedrow?
Yes.
Singlewood?
Yes.
Duff?
Yes.
Mallett?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
Suggest that as well.
Oh,
Set the
okay.
public hearing.
So, and then let's also get a motion to set the public hearing for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019, for our council meeting on June 13th, 2018. Do I hear that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Malik, second Duff. Further discussion? Let's get another roll call vote on it.
Scott?
Yes?
Nedrow?
Yes.
Singlewood?
Yes.
Duff?
Yes.
Mallett?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes. Thank you. I told you it's gonna take everybody to keep me on pace today, but we got there. Brings us to one last item, budget related. Set topics for the May 23rd work session. Do I actually, and we discussed having, also receiving recommendations from the Veterans Memorial Committee, which they expect to have. So do I have a motion actually to set a special meeting for May 23rd to discuss Veterans Memorial Committee and to hold a budget work session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Sikowitz, second Duff. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, brings us to
Here we go.
deferred item, E1.
E1?
Recommendation from Water Management Board regarding aeration. So,
You want
I
me-
had figured, Mr. Scott, we'd let you introduce
Pick it
the
up
topic.
and run with it?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if
Then
anybody.
we'll have some discussion around it.
Sure. Has a chance to review the preliminary Meeting notes from the Water Board, there was a lot of discussion around this topic. Some question, if you would, in summary, as to whether we, A, will end up renewing in our 5th year the use of the aerators, depending upon results to date. And of course, the ever-present discussion as to why those results aren't in line with what we're seeing on some other lakes. I did happen to bring a, are those too small?
Which directory?
Hmm?
Which directory?
The directory would be under aeration.
In the council meeting folder?
The council meeting folder, I'm sorry.
We got two, Lake Jordan and
Yeah, throw up Twin Lakes. That's a Michigan lake. So, we can't really see that, well, I guess you can. Can't see that. Where we are on this is recommendation, as you see, I see the handout, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, we got the handout. I don't think people had a chance to review it.
Yeah, it is
before.
well, the permitting requirement, or what they are, I guess we could call the pre-permitting requirements. These have evolved over the last 6 years, as I've kept my ear to the ground with various consulting companies, as well as 2 installers of the actual equipment. There's been 3 public hearings, of which I was supposed to make one. I didn't get there. But the bottom line is, we have moved from what our permit said, and I do have a copy of another permit from another lake, but there's a series of items that we originally received in our permit that we were to test for, which we do test for. And we do have a copy of the report that we have paid for through Paul in terms of the result of aeration to date. Always remembering the aeration is shallow. And I think I'm not incorrect in saying that at the current time, out of the approximate 18 installations, we're the only shallow one in operation, which means that we're operating at or above what we might want to call the inversion layer, or the layer that occurs during the summer to winter change. The new permitting requirements now drill deeper, and the testing becomes much more onerous, and the proof of results, I guess, basically are going to show in more detail, right down to microorganism count, which is very expensive, as to whether this aeration is working or not. The recommendation of the board was to move ahead based upon the recommendation of our limnologist and start this program of testing and anticipation of moving forward in year 6, 7, 8, and 9, if you would, or next year, with keeping the installation of the aerators as they are. The discussion really comes down, I think, to this. Checking around with other lakes, and again using some of the people that I know that are in this game, I've come to find out that Austin Lake, for example, Paw Paw Lake, for example, who had their permits issued about the same time as ours, tended to move through the renewal without having to do this kind of pre-testing because they were already on the system. I think Nathan, I, and Mike Sargent have individually read these new permitting requirements, and you come away with, I guess, a pretty direct interpretation that, yeah, we're going to need to do this. Everybody's heard me say time and time again, I'm trying to get a hold of Kowal and our other representative to arrange this meeting that we need to have to sit with the DEQ and say, hey, we had 5 years of shallow, let's go to 5 years of deep. We've got the equipment, we paid for it, and maybe we could duplicate some of the things that we've seen on other lakes here. For example, on Twin Lakes, they had about 2.8 feet of muck reduction over a period of 4 years. And when you think of 2.8 feet and.
Are you talking about a lake or just in one spot?
I'm talking about in a spot on an 800-acre lake. which
So
you can see.
in that bay of that 800
In that
lake
bay,
area?
in that bay. Now, whether we would see the same results or not, that's a good question, but I don't know what the total gallonage of increase in water that's available for that lake by reducing the muck or the bottom. I think it's in there, I think it's something around 43 million gallons or something, but the long and the short of it is the recommendation that I think I have come to, I would defer to Nathan, is that we should go back to the pond guy, have him file the permit, and wait for a resulting comeback from the DEQ in terms of what they are going to say we're going to need to do. In the meantime, I believe we'll be able to be more successful than we have in the past. Working with Colwall, I mean, I haven't had success. I know Nathan has tried a few times to get to him. He's working right now with the people at Duck Lake who are also trying to install aeration, and they're trying to do it under the old permitting requirements without having to go through the pre-testing. Historically, you might remember our lake was allowed an exemption. And 5 years ago, we got the permitting to go in without having to do any of the additional 1 year of pre-trial testing to set up a baseline because we had that information. The Water Board had been taking all of those samples for the number of years. So that's the long and the short of the summary. I think it's still, you know, from what I'm seeing, as a matter of fact, along with this, there's another lake, it's Jordan Lake in Cary, North Carolina, where there was a 67-page study done by the Department of Army Corps of Engineers that resulted in them using aeration, indicating that there is no negative responses or issues, but there is an anticipated great savings in using aeration as compared to chemicals and other things. The example you would see if we put that up there on the report is that I believe the number was if they continued to do what they were doing in Cary Lake. Now, I must say that lake is a lot different than ours because it's a reservoir lake. But the difference between using aeration at a cost of $4.5 or $5 million compared to what they felt they had to continue to do, which is something around $14 to $20 million, made aeration very logical. Now that equipment is coming in from Australia and it's very large, and you'd see that. But you've heard me move through a lot of different topics here. The summary is to say, go back to the pond guy. Let's not disturb the relationship with the DEQ. Have them file the permit. Do not do this particular testing. I think it's fair to say that Paul said we could push the beginning of the testing out into June or July.
So they require a year of monitoring.
Yeah.
And it says that consists of consecutive sampling in the spring, midsummer, late summer, and then they also require winter monitoring.
Right.
But the key point is that it has to be consecutive. So because our current permit doesn't expire till the end of next July, we wouldn't have to do the spring. We could start with the summer, do summer, fall, and then move into next year.
Yeah.
But it is going to force our hand in the next few months because we
Correct.
need to get this started in the summertime, late summer. It's also interesting too because their guidelines talk about how more or fewer years of monitoring may be required as site-specific circumstances warrant. But I don't have any way of knowing if we qualify for any site-specific circumstances at the moment. So we're trying to get some information from them. But yeah, as far as prepping the permit, I think that can happen while some of these questions about what should be required of us can be sought after.
Yeah, we've had trouble with the pond guys' aerators too. We haven't been satisfied with that. I think I can say that. I think members of the community who have worked in conjunction. I know, actually, you've been out a few times, have you not?
Yeah,
Mark?
we counted them, and
Yeah.
my wife was very interested in terms of, after going to that conference, actually measuring the field of bubbles.
Okay.
And even now, there's a vast difference in terms of the bubblers.
Yeah, and that's part of the design problem with the system they have. The manufacturer of, which happens to be the same company, the pond guy happens to be an installing part of the actual manufacturer of those aerators. They've come out with newer aerators that they like to consider deep water, deep lake, I understand. And we did force the hand on them last year to go from 2 horse to 2.5 horse compressors. But tuning each of these aerators has always been an issue. And when they pulled the aeration, we might remember that 5 of the heads that were pulled, I think 4 of the heads that were pulled were fully encrusted with the zebra mussels and weren't working at all. So every time we have them come out, it's always been a little bit of a battle for them to keep them all operating,
So I think my biggest concern here is, you know, we agreed to do this as a 5-year test. Let's give it a try. It's promising technology. We got into it. DEQ totally cuffed our hands in terms of what we can do. It's a technology that's really intended to work with deeper holes that have aeration, you know, that really get that thermocline. They have no oxygen below. We're forbidden to put it in any of those areas. I don't think we've seen any real improvement. I don't think they're doing any harm, but I think we're not seeing any real improvement. And I'm not sure I see the value for the village of continuing to go down this road at a cost of $13,500 or $15,000 or that plus electricity and whatever, if we're not getting any benefit, and the DNR is specifically prohibiting us from using them in the way that they're most beneficial and other lakes are seeing the benefit. So I mean, it feels to me like we've done it. We've done the pilot. We had some problems along the way. That's part of any pilot project. But I think we've given it a pretty good shot here in terms of making it work. But I don't think we're seeing any benefit right now, unless there's something that's come along in any of those reports, and I haven't seen anything that makes me think, yeah, we're getting muck reduction, yeah, we're getting weed reduction in there in particular. I don't think they're responsible. People thought they were responsible for more weeds. I don't think that's the case at all. But I don't think we're seeing the benefits we had hoped for. So, you know, I don't see to us as a village the benefit of continuing to go down this path if we're prohibited from using them in the way that's most beneficial, and we're now 4 years in and we're not seeing the muck reduction, the weed reduction, some of the other benefits that we'd hoped would accrue down there. I would love nothing more than had this worked out, because, you know, I hate putting chemicals in the lake. I think we need to do it to maintain a decent ecosystem down there, because we have invasive species and there's no other good way to deal with some of them. Happy to harvest as much as possible. It would be nice to do less. And Penny Lake has a lot of runoff and muck problems that are no fault of Penny Lake, but that need to be addressed and need to be fixed. But I'm not seeing it working. I'm not sure that we should be going down the path any further.
Well, I think with mild disagreement, the reason we haven't seen any benefit is, you've already mentioned it. We accepted an installation that is not in line with the recommendation for the equipment.
I totally agree with you on that, but I'm saying that if DNR is not changing the policy around it, there's no point in us continuing.
Well, and the reason I suggested we do it in this way, it would be a low-cost way. We can still dismantle, sell the equipment if we can't come to grips with meeting with the DEQ and the DNR in solving the issue which is at hand, which is their unwillingness to, at this point in time, allow us to move. We don't want to, according to the way I read this, to upset the apple cart at the beginning and look for that deep hole move until we at least have the permit under review and we can get that meeting of discussion.
And I would be totally happy to approve, initial permit.
Good.
Go down that path, see if something changes, but I would not at all be willing to support an additional $15,000 a year in testing.
Oh, neither would I.
For what we have.
And I've already indicated in emails to Nathan that from the standpoint of where we are in this additional 15,000 overridden with the 4,005 of additional money that we spend every 3 years
Yeah.
theoretically, in addition to that would then be the underlying contract that we signed with them. I think there are duplication of services that we are paying for that we shouldn't be paying for, the way I've seen this build up. And as I said to Nathan, I think what we need to also do is to go back to Paul and say, okay, here's our base contract, here's our aeration contract, and here's the new contract. You come back to us and tell us what integrative testing is being done that's duplication throughout it. So I don't
So
disagree.
I think we're pretty much in
agreement.
agreement. We're good at it.
First of all, I never was, and I'm not a fan of aeration. I thought we rushed into it. We put them in the wrong location, the pumps weren't big enough, the heads weren't right, the location. I think the first couple of years we spun our wheels because it seemed like wherever this came from, it had to be done instantly. Mark and his wife Kathy and I were up at that meeting, and aeration didn't really get a big round of applause or a whole lot of support from a lot of people.
Not from the DEQ.
No.
That was the big
Yeah.
thing that was noticeable was the
And
DEQ is
the other
not
thing,
flexible in terms of any of it.
Yeah.
Which was concerning.
and the
to be
other
honest
thing
with you.
is that where Mark is back in that canal, I've gone up and down that canal so many times, and he lives back there. You'll never convince me or him that a lot of that muck wasn't relocated in the canal. Because it's like you float on muck. And I really think that we're doing, instead of removing, we're relocating. And the other thing you have to think about, like if somebody says, oh, we can lose a ½ inch or 2 inches of muck a year. Big deal. We have places where there's over 30 feet of muck. This whole lake, I've done enough test borings in the 60s out here that Penny Lake has any place between 10 and 18 feet of muck. So, and then the muck you blow away, that stuff, is so fertile you can grow bricks in it. So weeds will come back. And another last comment, which is completely different, because I wanted to bring this up in this thing. They were talking about, harvesters, they cut off and all this fragmentation goes out and everything like that. So during this big seminar, I got up and I asked the expert, and I says, I want to ask you a question. We bought a new harvester, it's got a special gig, blades, it comes out, it scoops up. We have a very conscientious operator who cuts with the wind to pick it up. But I said, let me ask you something. It's July and it's 80 degrees out, and there's boats on the lake Saturday and Sunday from sunup to sundown. And then the harvester cuts 8 hours a day for 5 days a week. Which one do you think leaves more fragments and cuttings floating around on the surface of the lake? He says, oh, the boats do, by far. So, as long as you got the harvester, and it last year, I think Nathan and we all got that together, and I'm a little leery about Progressive too. I think Paul's had some weak areas that he's gotten caught in, But anyway, I think as much as we can use that harvester, we got to keep that going. But I'm not for going one more year, got a 5-year contract, and get out of it. But I would leave a couple of bubblers at the very end of Penny Lake where that stagnant water has this tendency to...
One or none, you still need a permit.
We'd have to get a permit. We'd have to do testing.
All right.
So, I mean, I'm definitely willing to do the permit application, see if there's gonna be a change. I can't say that I'm optimistic that we're gonna see anything there, but I think, I think the experiment's coming to its end.
No, I agree. And then anecdotally, as best as I can determine, there's only 2 states out of 14 who require this kind of permitting and this kind of testing. I mean, that's what you'll see from Cary.
Is that testing quite expensive?
Well, it's the additional $14,000 that they're asking for.
That's all for testing.
That's for testing for the DEQ, and as I said, in looking at it and looking at what they're asking for, I think we're already providing, my guess would be we're providing somewhere near half of this data requirement anyways. Temperature, dissolved oxygen, pH, we're already doing
That all
that
sounds like
with
stuff we test
phosphorus,
a
we're
lot.
doing that,
My
ammonia
takeaway of
nitrate,
it,
yeah.
just after being at that conference and talking to the people from the DEQ and the DNR, to be honest with you, they're much more concerned about wakeboard boats. That was their #1 thing that they're concerned about in the state of Michigan is the destructive power of wakeboard boats, the ones that take on like the 6,000 pounds of water.
Yeah.
And the new requirements sure make it sound like they're just making more hurdles for you to jump through to get to the end result of they're not going to let you put it in the holes anyways. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
it's-
we
it's-
won't know that till we have, we've been up to Lansing on the water board 3 times that I've been on the board, 2 with victories and 1 without. It's a question that they know who writes the checks for the
Sure.
budget. And we also, I remember the whole thing with the swans. We ended
Yeah.
up putting a program together that was followed, and of course now the swans no longer are protected. So time, I think, is on our side. However,
Well, as
I will say that.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
as I say, I think going along with the permitting to see if they'll allow us something is fine, but continuing on down the same path.
Oh, no, I don't disagree with that.
It's,
I'm not saying that what we're gonna do here is apply for the permit and then move to continue the installation as it sits. What I think is a logical way of dealing with an illogical organization is apply for the permit, let them come back to us and indicate what the requirements are, so we have something to go back at them and fight against needing to do what they're requiring here for new applicants and consider what we are, which is a renewal applicant. Then the question becomes, with that victory, if we can get that victory, then we'll go back after and see if we can do deep hole comparatives. And if we can't get that, yank them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I come from.
Okay, so I think we have a pretty reasonable
Yeah, I think
consensus
that's
around
pretty much.
around the approach here. Do I hear a motion to apply for the permit, the renewal permit for
And that would be the pond guy.
the pond guy?
For 1 year. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it's a 5-year permit, so we'd apply for I think the cost is $430 or
It
40.
varies from
Yeah.
50 to 1,100,
Yeah.
depending on how the DEQ deems your application. I think we'd be on the low end of that.
Yeah, I think we're at the
Because
low
we've been
end
doing this
because
for
we're
They're
five
gonna
renewal.
determine how much we should
It's,
pay.
it's
I
very.
wonder what number will it be.
It's very vague, but
they're hard
the
to
cost
deal
of the application fee for the MDEQ permit should be between $50 and $1,100, depending on whether they deem this to be a renewal, and if the project will require a pre-application meeting with the DEQ. So I can't say for certain what this fee is going to be right now.
Well, and hopefully, do we have to send the fee in with it? Because we don't know what the fee is, right?
I wish I could answer that, but I don't know
So-
how we would do that. I asked them the other day, I sent an email to our contact there,
They're so screwed.
and I said, look, if our permit expires July 22nd of next year, when would the permit be due to you if we wanted to keep it running all next year, so that you'd have enough time to review it? And I haven't gotten an answer
Yeah.
back on that. So I've asked for some procedural guidance and
So-
haven't received it yet.
And this would be up to the pond guy, by the way. They paid for the permitting
Yeah.
last year. We didn't. The last time around. I think it's a dicey direction to go in, but I think it's worthy of at least, I guess, trying to get to a table, look at them in the eye, and figure out where they're going to go and not go with it. If they're not going to go to deep hole, we end the whole program and see what we can do to sell the equipment.
On that topic, we one place where we might want to think about it is down on McCoy, the little chunk of muck and pond that we have down there. That might be worth getting some aeration in. So that's one bubbler and one very small.
Keep the equipment.
It's over on the other side, there's a fountain across the street, but it doesn't do any circulation on our side. Anyways, hear a motion, given the uncertainty, motion to apply for a renewal permit at a cost not to exceed $1,100.
I make that motion.
Second it.
So motion Malik, second Duff. Further discussion? Roll call vote.
Yes?
Nedrow.
Yes.
Singlewitz.
Yes.
Duff.
Yes.
Malik.
Yes.
McGee.
Yes. I want to give it the best possible chance to succeed. I just, I'm concerned that our hands have been tied for a long time here, that they're going to continue to be tied.
Well, I think that's one of the good arguments, is to say, okay, you have 5 years of non-depot, why don't we just lower this to see what we can do in depot for 2 years? And go from there.
Okay.
Seems too logical for the DEQ then.
Where in here, let me find my agenda again.
Oh, no.
I told you, it's going to take everybody to keep me on board today. There we go. Okay, so we have done our reversion to item E1 after O. Brings us to pending business, of which we have none. Update from the chief.
I bought a bike.
You bought a bike?
I did. I
Training
bought.
wheels?
What'd you buy?
The basket on front.
You know, I was looking over my budget, and I was actually going to.
Turn it in.
I was actually going to put in for another police bike, so we have 2 police bikes. Police bikes should be ridden in pairs, they suggest that. So I was looking to buy, and I said, you know what? I just hate spending $1,000 or $1,200 for a new bike. So I looked on eBay, believe it or not. I found a really nice police bike for sale, and so I started bidding on it. So for $107.50,
Holy.
I got a really nice police bike. It doesn't have the lights, it just has, it's just all the stuff, the gears, the painting, and it's got new tires on it. It probably needs a little work, but for $107.50, I drove to.
Does it have the cards in the spokes? So
No, it
it's a
doesn't. I
motorcycle?
took the sports cards out, but I drove to Oak Park and picked it up on Monday. And,
great.
It was from Oak Park?
It was from Oak Park, and so I will probably be looking to get reimbursed for $107, because I put it on my own credit card, on my own eBay account, so. But, yeah, so I bought a bike. Other than that, thank you for, I think we're in a pretty good shape with my police department right now. I mean, we have some really good folks, and I think they all have the right attitude of service, so I appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to the summer. It's going to be we have a really great department, and I'm looking forward to being able to serve the community better. So, thank you. That's it.
Update from the treasurer.
Actually, I do for a change. Whilst out on my afternoon constitutional, ambling about the village, I happened to stumble in front of the new Richardson Center. Took a peek at it on the outside, around the perimeter, went inside. It's really, really nice. So if you haven't been there, take a peek. And no, I didn't sit down with the 85-year-old card sharks and get cleaned out. So. That's it.
Let the record show our treasurer did not get taken at cards. Update from the administrator.
Just a couple things I wanted to point out. The first lake treatment was today. It was a fairly small treatment targeted mainly at algae and some milfoil that's developing. I just want to make sure residents are aware that every treatment map, every treatment notice is on our website. It's on the front page. It says 2018 treatment info. Click on it. You can see everything we have about treatments. We get questions a lot as to why we can't announce the treatments farther in advance, but the way it works is that Paul does a survey, and then we have a limited amount of time to do the treatment, to treat what he sees on that specific survey. And if there's just not a lot of notice we can give, but we try to give at least 2 or 3 days, and certainly have that information available online. We also email it out to anybody who receives our emails, so any resident that's not getting our emails that would like to, you can do that on our website as well. The harvester and the new buoys should be in no later than Monday or Tuesday of next week. So be on the lookout for those. If you have any feedback on the buoys, let me know. We're excited about seeing those in the water. Just wanted to remind everyone that next month's going to be a public hearing heavy month. We've got the budget public hearing, but we also have the Clara Miller public hearing. The revised draft is available now for public view. It's online. Hard copies are available here at the office. And so that'll be a good night to discuss that on June 13th. Two more quick things. The Benstein Walkway was a project that Treasurer Condek mentioned a while ago. We did apply for a grant from the RCOC that would have, I think $7,500 was about what it would kick in towards that project. I should know in the next 2 weeks or so if we're going to get that. If we do get that, hopefully that can serve as something to initiate moving forward with this project. I know there's still a few issues to work out, but we're pretty close to having that ready to go. And just wanted to thank Treasurer Condek. I know a lot of our discussion on the budget lies ahead, but the amount of work it takes to get to this point is pretty serious, and he always does a great job, so appreciate his budget prep.
All right, council comments. We'll start down there with Malik.
One thing, excuse me, last council meeting when we were talking about the parks, we were talking about trees and maintenance and things. And we had this bad weather here a few weeks back. Had a large branch fall off the tree out in front of my place that is on village property. And I'd like to comment about the police, I think, that notified the DPW to come out. I don't know what hour, because I didn't even know what happened. But they pulled it out of the road. Within 2 days, the DPW crew was there. They did a marvelous job in cleaning it up, cutting it up, hauling it away, trimming the branch that fell right back to the main trunk. But on top of that comment that they did a great job, I sure would like to have people look into trees that are on village property that have dead limbs, that they can, maybe get 1 or 2 a month. Because there could have been a real accident there if somebody had gone by with the size of the limb that had come down in front of my place. But again, the cleanup job was fabulous. I compliment them.
No comment.
Mm-hmm. Scott.
I learned earlier today that a spare key should be put in a car. So, other than that, no other comment.
Gaining wisdom every month.
Yeah, I was just coming out of Marshall when I got the call. Guess what? My keys are locked in the car. Really? Okay.
No comment, Drew.
A couple things. I concur with what Bob Malik said. I've been bringing this up a lot between the Dutch elm and all these other diseases and the pine tree diseases that we have. There's plenty of trees that need to be removed, trimmed, or cut that are dead in the village that are on public property, on village property. I too would like to thank our treasurer, who every year makes the budget session tolerable. And I would like to make sure that the ladies in the office that put that newsletter together, again, did a fantastic job. They're definitely on the job. We got some good employees over there, and they got good leadership. So keep it up. Give them an atta girl.
And I had a couple of items. I actually wanted to pass along my thanks to DPW and the administration too. I'm always telling people, hey, if you see something and, call the village and report it. And actually, I had noticed a pretty big pothole growing on Ladd Road, and I was myself guilty of driving by it a couple times, and I was thinking, well, that's not quite where we are. But then I called up or emailed Nathan and said, hey, there's a really big pothole. I think it's outside of our area, but it's on Ladd Road. And he talked to Andy. Andy got a hold of our Road Commission of Oakland County. They came out and filled not just that big wheel endangering pothole, but also a good chunk of them right through that area. So it wasn't an area of our responsibility. But I really want to thank them both for getting a hold of RCOC and getting that fixed, because a lot of people in the village, on the south side of the village, they go south out of the village that way. Also, I wanted to mention I did get a chance to stop by the Commerce Township meeting last night. It's been a while since I'd been there. Just wanted to swing by, and they had a couple items on their agenda that I thought were interesting. looking. So one of them is they are looking into police and fire SAD renewal. I think people may recall that we in the village, because we have our own police department, we are not part of their police SAD. They do that on the rest of Commerce Township to raise money for sheriffs. We are, however, part of the fire SAD because we use their fire. They're looking at a couple of different options there. One of them is they think they need a little bit more money than they've been collecting so far, especially perhaps around sheriff's department. So they're going to work through some more of that. I think they're going to have more to come next month, but just keep an eye on that with Commerce. The other thing that was on that agenda last night, and I was kind of glad I was there to see it, was CW3 has been engaged in conversations with Commerce around potentially using Dodge Park for soccer fields. And from the meeting, it sounds like they're pretty far down the road, and they think they're going to get to an agreement and get some fields there. So I wanted to say congratulations to, or at least preliminary congratulations to CW3. I think it's going to be a good location for them, and didn't work out here. We all remember the a lot of stuff that was in there. But I thought one of the things that was kind of unfair was CW3 got wrongly vilified by a few people in terms of what they are as an organization. So I'm really glad that I think they're going to get to a good spot for some additional fields.
Did they have their
I
presentation?
concur, because when we went through that, my kids played in it. It's a good youth organization, and I think the mistake that we made, or Wortman made, was that it was called CW3 soccer fields, and it should have just been, do we want soccer fields in the Village Park, period?
But either way, I don't want to go back and
Yeah,
relitigate
no, I know.
relitigate the
No,
event.
they're-
I just want to say, I think
They're a good
they've gotten
group.
to a good spot.
Yeah.
John,
I
you're
was
good.
just wondering if you saw the slide presentation, because I saw it at the Park and Rec at Commerce.
I did not see the full, no, I don't think they had the presentation. It's mostly discussion around where they were going to be, and I think they were going to take their committee and go back out and take a look at the site and work a little more on the location.
Yeah, the one number I really remember was there was, I think, 133 families from Walt Lake that's involved, and there's over 3,000 participants in that soccer league. That's really amazing.
So anyways, I just wanted to bring that news update back to folks. And finally, I will say that I am really glad that the 90 days of February, or however long it went on, have come to an end, and we finally reached spring. So with that, I would actually entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session. Motion Nedrow, second Duff, all in favor?
Aye.
What?
Roll call.
Okay, let's get a roll call for that.
Good save.
Scott,
Yes?
Nedrow.
Yes.
Singlewood,
Yes.
Duff,
Yep.
Mallett,
Yes.
McGee.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
That motion carries.
Keep grass.
We are adjourned to closed session.
That's some tough ass crap.